Moorhead, time to back it up. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, previewing and predicting every team in the Power 5 plus the major independents team by team. And we've got a mad dash to get you set for 2018 because the kickoff for the season is just 3 days away. Of course, we had some FCS and Group of 5 games this past weekend. But for the Power 5, we're coming up on a mad dash to try to get through the rest of the SEC and the Big Ten and the major independents and set up our conference standings. So I've knocked out the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC plus the conference championship games for those conferences. So please check out those videos and leave your prediction in the comments. I would like to see how close I am to you guys out there. All right, like, comment, and subscribe, of course. Joe Moorhead in place at Mississippi State. He's only been a head coach at Fordham. Penn State offensive coordinator, given much credit for the Penn State explosion as the best offense in the Big Ten over the past 2 seasons. He doesn't necessarily have those players, but he's got talent and athleticism on offense at Mississippi State that is comparable. It's not like Penn State's Alabama and Mississippi State is Kansas. The athletes are comparable. Of course, Saquon Barkley, almost impossible to replace. Joe Moorhead got off the plane at Starkville and started talking big right out of the gate. And started talking about let's get the players fitted for championship rings, the whole deal. Now, Penn State's top players, guys like Marcus Allen, Mike Gesicki, some of the best players that have moved on to the NFL, they say that he's that good, that the defense dominated the offense in Penn State practices until he arrived, and it quickly turned. They say he's a genius. We will see. He will not have Nick Fitzgerald for Game 1 against Stephen F. Austin. I think they'll limp by. He was just suspended just hours ago for an incident that occurred back in March. Keaton Thompson, fortunately, with good game experience against 2 quality opponents in Ole Miss and Louisville. He had to come in, of course, when Fitzgerald suffered the really devastating injury, broken ankle in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss. Keaton Thompson looked nervous. He looked not ready, unprepared, scattershot through his first couple series. Then he got better and better and better, led a comeback against the Rebels. It fell short. Played well in that game, went to the bowl game, and sure, the defense wrapped it up against Lamar Jackson and certainly played a great game, but Keaton Thompson ran for 3 touchdowns in the bowl game against Louisville. 446 on the ground, 6 touchdowns total, 49% passer. That's got to get better if he's going to play. The plan is Nick Fitzgerald, week 2, ready to go back in the lineup, because they've got a date at Kansas State that is mighty interesting and challenging. Fitzgerald, everybody says, okay, great, dynamic, dual-threat quarterback, and he's the face of the franchise and has been at Mississippi State. I think he's given just a little bit too much credit. Yes, he's a very good player, very good quarterback. There's a statement that Dan Mullen made coming off the field at the St. Petersburg Bowl after Fitzgerald's freshman campaign when they needed a blocked PAT to beat Miami of Ohio. And Fitzgerald had run for a zillion yards in the game and made some plays. And Dan Mullen said, if we are to improve, he needs to improve considerably as a passer. I don't know that he's done that. He hasn't gotten help from the wide receivers, that's for sure. That's been the down spot on this team for a few seasons. But at 55% last year, 15 touchdowns, 11 picks. Again, not a lot of help from the wide receivers. So we'll see if he's taken those steps in this final shot in Starkville to get to an SEC championship game. He ran for 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. And that's in missing basically 2 games. So he's an incredible athlete, knows how to run it. He's not dynamic, not going to burn anybody, the best players on the defense in the open field, but he's just one of those guys that knows when to pass and when to run, and he's a tough guy to bring down. Okay. The poor man Saquon Barkley in this offense is Arius Williams, who ran for 1,000 yards, 1107, 6 touchdowns, 16 catches out of the backfield. So that is the number that I'm going to be watching this season as Joe Moorhead takes over the offense and maybe makes him a Saquon, gets him more involved in the passing game. And also Kylan Hill, the sophomore, who's going to take some carries away to keep Arius fresh, and also because he's really good. He ran for 393 last year on the ground, 3 touchdowns. Okay, the wide receivers got to get better. Here are the guys that are in play this year. Dedrick Thomas caught 4 touchdowns, 22 receptions. Jesse Jackson, 27 catches. Keith Mixon, 18. Jamal Couch, 10 and 2 touchdowns. Production out of those guys, critical. The tight ends, Farrod Green caught 9 passes. That's going to go up. The tight end is integral in a Joe Moorhead offense, has been. Senior Justin Johnson gets into the mix as well. Okay, the offensive line should be, as a unit, collectively better than it was last year, and it was good. It's a very good unit. Martinez Rankin off to the Houston Texans, and he was the All-SEC player there. You got seniors Deion Calhoun and Elkton Jenkins. They're back. But for some reason, this offense, 63rd S&P Plus ranking last year. If you look at 1,100-yard back, Nick Fitzgerald at quarterback. I know the wide receivers have been disappointing, but they've recruited well there. It's time for these guys to step up. The offensive line's formidable. It should be a much better offense than it's been, and maybe Joe Moorhead's the guy to make it happen. Defense, one of the best in the nation. The raw stats say top 10, the S&P Plus 19th. The defensive line is great. The ends are massive. They're all SEC, all-American types. And Montez Sweat, 15.5 tackles for loss and at 10.5 sacks. And, of course, Jeffrey Simmons, the prized recruit, who is fulfilling his potential, 12 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Those numbers should go up. Jerry Green, underrated. It's usually talk about Sweat and Simmons, but Jerry Green, very productive, 11 tackles for loss and 5 sacks as well. The linebackers loaded across the unit with juniors Leo Lewis, 46 tackles, Tim Washington, sophomores, and Errol Thompson, who had 46 tackles and 5.5 for loss, and Willie Gay. They're really good at linebacker. The secondary loses some players, but 3 of 5 corners back. The 2 safeties, tremendous. Mark McLaurin is one of the best in business. He's a ball hawk. He wrapped up the Belk Bowl, or whatever bowl they played in, Tax Slayer Bowl against Louisville. Can't keep them straight there in the Carolinas. 79 tackles, 6 picks for McLaurin. Jonathan Abram had 71 tackles. So those 2 safeties accounted for the 1 and 2 slots in total tackles on Mississippi State's roster. The non-conference highlighted by Kansas State. Finally, Mississippi State getting out and playing somebody other than BYU. Good to see. A date in Manhattan will be a struggle, will be a grind. Mississippi State's too athletic. They win that game. In the SEC East, they draw Kentucky, as they typically do. They get a real cushy cross-division rivalry with the Wildcats. They travel to Lexington. They also play Florida. Intriguing game. Dan Mullen back in Starkville. The losses will come at Alabama. Of course, the Bulldogs took the Tide to the wire, should have won that game. They let Calvin Ridley get loose, and Jalen Hurts make some plays, and they let Bama off the hook late, but that was in Starkville. They've got to go to Tuscaloosa. Out of Auburn, LSU, Florida, those 3 games in particular, not that they couldn't lose the Egg Bowl or lose to Texas A&M, but those 3 are the risky ones in particular. Auburn, LSU, and Florida. They do have to go to Baton Rouge. They got Florida at home. They've got Auburn at home. I say they lose 2 more. 5-3 for the Bulldogs. 5-3 for Mississippi State in the SEC. 9-3 is a nice campaign. It's fringe top 10, depending on who they beat, when they beat them, how they look, and going to a pretty good bowl selection right there for Mississippi State. My thoughts on the Bulldogs. Leave your record for Mississippi State football 2018 right there, and any thoughts that you have on college football. And we do it right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Comment, like, and subscribe. Get on the weekly newsletter as well. Send your email to markrogerstv@gmail.com. We'll see you with the rest of the SEC Western Division.